something isn't adding up, and fans are starting to notice. Joseline Hernandez just sparked major buzz online, and it all started with what was supposed to be a peaceful girls' retreat. Yoga, massages, relaxation. The perfect escape, right? Wrong. Because behind the calm aesthetic, things quickly turned chaotic. Unexpected drama, wild moments, and a vibe that was anything but relaxing. And just when people started talking, she dropped a series of viral photos. Now fans are zooming in, questioning everything, and trying to figure out what's really going on. And if that wasn't enough, right in the middle of all this buzz, the official Get Money Girls Miami premiere was announced. Coincidence? Or perfect timing? Because the more you look at it, the more it feels like there's a bigger plan behind it all. Let's get into it. It all started with a trip that looked perfect. When Joseline Hernandez introduced the idea of a luxury retreat with her Get Money Girls, the concept felt refreshing. Instead of the usual fast-paced, drama-filled energy people expect, this looked like something different, something calmer, more intentional. A break, at least that's what it was supposed to be. The plan sounded simple: step away from the noise, reconnect, and focus on self-care. The kind of experience people associate with healing and personal growth. And from the outside, everything about it seemed to match that vision. There were yoga sessions scheduled, the kind that start early in the morning, where everything feels quiet and still. The goal: balance, centering the mind, letting go of stress. Then there were sound bowl sessions, something that's become popular in wellness spaces. Soft vibrations, calming frequencies, an environment designed to help people relax on a deeper level. It's the kind of activity that signals, this is not about chaos, this is about peace. Add in professional massages, scenic surroundings, and a curated group of women, and you've got what looks like a textbook luxury retreat. And for a moment, it really felt like that's what was happening. Early glimpses shared online showed exactly what you'd expect: calm environments, aesthetic visuals, and moments that felt almost cinematic. The kind of content that makes people think, yeah, this is the kind of life I want. Fans were intrigued, because this wasn't the usual energy associated with Joseline. This felt more controlled, or more grounded, almost like a shift into a different phase, and naturally that got people talking. But here's the thing about curated moments. They don't always tell the full story, because behind the scenes, something else was starting to unfold. At first, it wasn't obvious. Everything still looked fine on the surface. People were participating, interacting, and going along with the schedule. But within the group, the energy wasn't as aligned as it seemed, and it all came down to one key detail. Not everyone came on this trip for the same reason. Some of the girls were fully committed to the retreat idea. They wanted the full experience, the calm, the reset, the opportunity to disconnect and actually take the activities seriously. For them, this was more than just a vacation. It was intentional. But for others, this was still a trip. A chance to enjoy themselves, have fun, and embrace the moment without necessarily sticking to a structured routine. And while that mindset isn't wrong, it didn't exactly match the original purpose of the retreat. And that difference, that's where everything started. Because when you put people with different expectations into the same environment, it doesn't take long for those differences to show. At first, it was subtle. Small moments where the energy didn't quite match. Maybe someone wasn't fully engaged in a session. Maybe someone else was more focused on enjoying the vibe than following the schedule. Nothing major, just small shifts. But those small shifts started to add up, because in a retreat setting, where everything is supposed to feel aligned and intentional, even the smallest disconnect can stand out. And then there's the personality factor. This isn't just any group. These are strong, confident women with big personalities. The kind of personalities that naturally bring energy into any space. And while that energy can be powerful, it can also make it harder to maintain a calm, balanced environment. especially when everyone isn't on the same page. As the days went on, the structure of the retreat began to loosen. The schedule that once felt organized started to feel optional. Some activities became less consistent, attendance shifted, engagement dropped in certain moments, and slowly, the focus began to change. Instead of everything revolving around relaxation and self-care, the atmosphere started to feel more open, less controlled, more spontaneous, and that's not necessarily a bad thing until it starts affecting the group dynamic. Because when structure fades, personalities take over. And that's exactly what happened here. Interactions became more expressive. Conversations carried more weight. The overall vibe started shifting away from quiet and centered to something a bit louder, a bit more unpredictable. Still, nothing had fully broken yet. At this stage, everything was still manageable. The retreat hadn't completely lost its direction. It was just drifting. But if you were paying close attention, you could feel it. The energy wasn't the same anymore. What started as a unified experience was beginning to split into different directions. Some still holding on to the original purpose, others moving towards something else entirely. And once that kind of split happens, it's only a matter of time before things change completely. It's because a retreat like this depends on alignment, on shared intention, on everyone moving in the same direction. And when that alignment starts to break, everything else follows. What makes this situation even more interesting is the contrast. On one side, you have the image being presented. Calm, aesthetic, controlled. On the other, you have the reality behind the scenes. Shifting energy, mixed intentions, and a dynamic that's slowly becoming harder to manage. And that contrast? That's what creates curiosity. Because people start to notice, they start to question, and they start to look closer. Which is exactly what began happening here. The more content came out, the more people paid attention. And the more they paid attention, the more they realized that this wasn't just a simple retreat. Something was changing, as something wasn't quite matching the original idea. And whether it was intentional or not, it was building attention. Because in today's world, it doesn't take much for a situation like this to turn into a conversation. And once it becomes a conversation, it becomes something bigger. By the end of this phase of the trip, one thing was clear. This was no longer just a peaceful getaway. The foundation had shifted, the energy had changed, and whatever was coming next, it wasn't going to look anything like the original plan. Because the moment alignment is lost, chaos isn't far behind. Because up until now, most of what was happening stayed within the group. The retreat had already started drifting away from its original purpose. But the outside world was only seeing controlled glimpses, curated moments, aesthetic clips, and just enough content to keep people interested. But then, the photos dropped, and everything changed. Joseline Hernandez began posting a series of highly styled images on her official Instagram. And these weren't random snapshots. These were intentional, polished, carefully framed. The kind of photos that don't just show a moment. They send a message. In the images, Joseline appears confident, composed, and completely in control. The setting is calm, almost tropical. The styling is sharp. Body-hugging outfits, luxury accessories, strong posture, direct eye contact. Everything about the visuals says one thing: control, confidence, power. And that's where things get interesting. Because this image, it doesn't match the energy people were starting to hear about. At this point, whispers of chaos, mixed vibes, and unexpected moments from the retreat were already circulating. People were picking up on the shift. Some noticed that the relaxing getaway didn't seem as peaceful as it was supposed to be. So when these photos came out, fans started connecting the dots. And the reactions? Instant. Comments began flooding in. People zooming in, analysing details, trying to read between the lines. Because when something feels slightly off, the internet notices fast. Some fans focused on the styling, praising the look, the confidence, the aesthetic. To them, Joseline looked exactly how she always does, bold, unbothered, and in control of her image. But others? They started asking questions. Because when you look closely at these photos, especially from certain angles, something stands out, the midsection, and almost immediately speculation began. Wait, is that just the angle? Or is there something more going on here? Now let's be clear. Nothing was confirmed. No announcement, no direct hint, no caption pointing toward anything specific. But that didn't stop the conversation, because that's how social media works. Once an idea is introduced, even subtly, it spreads. And in this case, it spread fast. Some fans believed it was just the pose, a fitted dress, a certain angle, lighting, posture, all things that can easily create the illusion of a different body shape. Others weren't so sure. They pointed out the consistency across multiple photos, the way the dress fit, the way the body looked from different angles. And suddenly, what started as a simple observation turned into full-on speculation. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Because while all of this was happening, Joseline said nothing. No clarification, no confirmation, no denial, just more posts. And that silence? That's what kept the conversation alive. Because when there's no answer, people keep guessing. And every new post becomes another piece of the puzzle. But the photos weren't just about speculation. They also served another purpose: image control. Because regardless of what was happening behind the scenes, whether the retreat was calm or chaotic, these visuals told a very specific story. I'm still in control. I'm still confident. I'm still that girl. And that contrast? That's what made everything even more compelling. On one side, you have a retreat that's slowly turning into something unpredictable. On the other, you have a perfectly curated online presence that shows none of that. It creates a gap, a difference between reality and presentation. And people notice that, because in today's digital world, audiences are sharper than ever. They don't just watch, they analyze, they compare, they question. And when something doesn't fully match, they dig deeper, which is exactly what happened here. The photos became more than just photos. They became a talking point, a moment, a reason for people to engage, comment, share, and speculate. And from a content perspective, that's powerful, because whether people were praising, questioning, or debating, they were all doing the same thing: paying attention. And attention? That's everything. At this point, the buzz had officially started, not just around the retreat, not just around the photos, but around Joseline as a whole. She was trending, people were talking, and the conversation wasn't slowing down. Which leads to the biggest question of all. Was this all just a coincidence, or was it building towards something bigger? Because right when the speculation hit its peak, something else dropped. Something that shifted the entire conversation again, the official announcement. And suddenly, everything started to make sense, or at least feel connected. Because timing like this, it's hard to ignore. That's exactly what we're going to break down. Just when the conversation was at its peak, just when fans were fully locked in, analysing every post, every detail, every possible clue, the announcement dropped. And suddenly, everything shifted. Right in the middle of the retreat buzz. Right after the viral photos, Joseline Hernandez revealed the official premiere of Get Money Girls Miami. April 20th, at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. A full event, red carpet, party, exclusive vibe. And just like that, what felt like separate moments started to feel connected. Because think about the timeline. First, the retreat, presented as peaceful but quickly becoming a topic of discussion. Then the photos, polished, confident, but sparking speculation and curiosity. And now, the premiere, perfectly timed, dropping right when attention is at its highest. Coincidence? Maybe. But to a lot of people watching this unfold, it doesn't feel random, because this is how modern content works. It's not always about one moment. It's about the build-up, the anticipation, the conversation, the attention. And whether intentional or not, this sequence created exactly that. By the time the premiere was announced, people were already invested. Then they weren't just seeing a show launch, they were stepping into a story they had already started following. And that's what makes this so interesting, because the premiere itself wasn't just a simple announcement, it was an experience. The event details alone tell you that. Miami location, Electric 23 in Wynwood, a place known for its nightlife and culture. Red carpet at 7 p.m, setting the tone for exclusivity and glam. Premiere at 8 p.m, turning it into a full moment, not just a drop. And then there's the invitation. Pull up. Watch with us. Be part of it. This isn't just about viewers. It's about participation, about making the audience feel like they're included in something bigger. And from a branding perspective, that's powerful, because it transforms passive viewers into active fans. People who don't just watch the content, they engage with it, they talk about it, they share it, they show up. And all of that started with buzz. Now here's where things get even more layered, because when you look back at everything, the retreat, the photos, the timing of the premiere, it creates a question that's hard to ignore. Was this all part of a rollout? Now, let's be clear. There's no official confirmation of that. No statement saying, yes, this was planned. But the sequence itself, it's hard not to notice, because in today's entertainment world, attention is currency, and the way you build attention is by creating moments that make people stop, moments that make people question, moments that make people talk. And this situation, it had all of that. The retreat gave people a starting point, something unexpected. The photos gave people something to analyze, something visual, something intriguing. And the premiere gave people a destination, something to look forward to. It's a full cycle, and whether intentional or not, it worked. Because right now, people aren't just aware of Get Money Girls Miami. They're curious about it. They want to know what really happened on that trip. They want to see the dynamics, the personalities, the drama. They want context. And the only place they're going to get that is the show. That's what makes this strategy, planned or not, so effective. It turns real-life moments into content, and content into anticipation, and anticipation into views. Now, from a fan perspective, this creates mixed reactions. Some people are excited. They see the energy, the drama, the personalities, and they're ready to watch. For them, this is exactly what makes reality TV entertaining. Others are more skeptical. They're questioning the authenticity, wondering if the chaos was exaggerated, if the timing is too perfect, if everything we're seeing is as real as it seems. And honestly, both reactions make sense, because that's the nature of content like this. It sits right on the line between reality and presentation, between what actually happens and how it's shown. But regardless of where you stand on that, one thing is undeniable. It got attention. And in today's digital space, that's everything. Because without attention, there's no conversation. Without conversation, there's no momentum. And without momentum, there's no impact. But here, the impact is clear. Or people are talking, people are watching, people are waiting to see what the show actually reveals. Because at the end of the day, that's the final piece of the puzzle. All the buzz, all the speculation, all the moments, they lead to one thing, the premiere. And once that airs, we'll finally see what's real, what's edited, and what was only part of the build-up. Until then, everything remains a question, a conversation, a moment in motion. So is this just a series of coincidences? Or a perfectly timed rollout? That's up to you to decide. But one thing's for sure, Joseline Hernandez knows exactly how to keep people watching. Now I want to hear from you. What do you really think is going on here? Do you think all this buzz, the retreat drama, the viral photos, and the perfectly timed premiere is just a coincidence? Or do you think there's a bigger plan behind it all? Be honest. Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And let me know. Are you actually going to watch Get Money Girls Miami when it drops? Or are you just here for the drama? Also, what's your take on those viral photos? Do you think fans are over-analyzing, or did they really spot something interesting? Let's talk about it. If you enjoyed this breakdown and want more content like this, trending news, celebrity buzz, and real-time reactions, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Because trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. We're just getting started, and I'll see you in the next video.